Apple trees are pruned during the winter in the dormant season when they're not actively growing. For example, this Bramley apple tree here beside me. It's an unrestricted or standard tree, which means it is not hard pruned into a shape like a cordon or an espalier, but it's more or less allowed to grow to its normal size and shape, just with a little bit of maintenance pruning. Established or mature trees are pruned for maintenance. That means they are pruned to maintain their health, but they're also pruned to improve fruiting. The three most important cuts that you would have to make are for the 3 Ds, that is dead, damaged and diseased branches. So you would have to take a step back, have a look at the tree as a whole and see if there are any branches which need to be removed because they are either dead, damaged or diseased. And thereafter you'll just have a look and see if there are any branches that are crossing quite close to each other, because if they are, there is a chance that when it's windy they will rub up against each other and will create wounds and therefore get damaged as well. There's an example here of both a dead branch, the top one here, as well as some disease, possibly canker, which is a fungal disease and needs to be cut out because it'll spread throughout the tree otherwise. What you will need to do is, especially if there is a diseased part, you will have to cut well below that part that is diseased, because the disease may also be in the branch further in. The part you want to also cut to always, regardless of what kind of cut you're making or for whatever reason you're making that cut, is to an outward facing bud, so that the resulting branch that may grow from that bud doesn't grow into the tree, that this one here would grow up, whereas this one further down here will grow outward. This may not be too bad, but it's very close to the disease here, and I would prefer to go well back onto that branch and cut to the outward facing bud there. Also try and make a sloping cut so that any rainwater that falls onto the branch or the cut will run off. There you go. There's a good example of a crossing branch here. It's this small one. Not only is it crossing up against this larger branch up here, but it's also growing into the tree, which it shouldn't. And you can see where it's crossing the larger branch, it's actually touching and rubbing up against the branch and causing damage, which means that this small branch will have to be pruned out. There's another example here of a diseased branch. The disease is up in here, obviously canker again. And to cut well below the diseased part, to cut to an outward facing branch, which would be this one, I'd have to cut as far down as here. Need the loppers for that. Slightly sloping cut if you can. The purpose of pruning younger trees, trees that are between 1 and 4 years old, is for training. That is to create a framework, to make sure it's open-centered and will be free branching. For 1 or 2 year old trees, you would cut back the stronger branches to about half their length and the weaker branches to about a third of their length. With 3 and 4 year old trees, it gets a little bit more complex, where you decide which branches you're keeping, which you're not keeping. The ones you don't want to keep for the framework, you're cutting back to about 3 or 4 buds of their length, and the other branches are not cut as hard, and I'll show you how to do this now. This is an apple tree of the variety Lord Hendlip. It's a late flowering and late fruiting tree, which means that the apples will be really good for storage. It's about 3 to 4 years old, so I'll have to decide on the one hand what I'm keeping, and then I'll have to look and see what I need to prune back a little bit to make sure that it's going to be free branching. One branch straight away that I see that will have to go all together is this one here, because it's growing into the framework, and as it gets longer it will start crossing, so that will have to be cut. Also, the leader of this branch, this small one here, is a lateral. The leader is one that I don't necessarily want to keep, but I don't want to cut out altogether either. So I'm going to have to cut them back, or cut it back to about 4 buds from the bottom there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 there. I'm going to cut it just there, sloping cut. There we go. Now I'm going to prune all the branches that I'm going to keep for the framework, and the way to do that is to prune last season's growth by half. So I can see there is a small bit of a swelling here, and there's a slight difference in colour of the bark as well. So you can see this is last season's growth, and below that swelling is the previous season's growth. So all I want to cut is half of last season's growth. So again, you try and find an outward facing bud about halfway up. So there's one there. I need to just make a sloping cut above that. And the next branch is here. Again, there's a bit of a swelling there. I can see this is last season's growth. About halfway up is here. I'm going to cut just there, sloping cut again. And I'm going to go all the way around. This one here is a taller branch. Again, here is the point where last year's growth or last season's growth started, and about halfway up an outward facing bud. I'm going to put in there.